Hello there, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for those of you who are on time. Thank you for those of you enjoying the breakfast. Good call. So it's great to be back in person. It's great to have food and drinks as well. Now that said, please allow me to welcome all of you to the Maritime Cybersecurity Dialogue, Cyber Safety at Sea. Well, my name is Carissa Seed, and it's great to be back here today as your MC for this morning. Now that said, we are also joined online by our attendees and participants from all around the world. So I hope that you're all logged in, and 2 hours of program that you'll stay with us towards the end, as we promise you that we'll have exciting gifts that we'll like to give you if you stay all the way to the end and participate in our quiz. But that said, before we start ahead with the program, just a gentle reminder to check that your mobile phones and all beeping devices are switched to silent mode. So what to expect in this 2 hours ahead? We will be having 3 presentations, a panel session where we'll get you to participate along with us by asking questions, and then we'll head for the lunch break. Well, that's it. I was looking up and saying, why are you here this morning? Good question, right? Why are we here this morning? For cybersecurity, of course. And there's so much talk even yesterday at our opening session about digitalization, and that is what we want to move ahead sustainably, safely, and of course, the devil is in the details. So today we're very glad to be having our speakers who have come in specially to share specific insights based on their experience and what they would be able to share best in their role as well. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for making time to be here. We will start with the very first presentation this morning, which is the Maritime Cyber Risk Management. Now, a bit of background about our first speaker. He's been working in the information technology for over 15 years, and he's been a cybersecurity practitioner in both the commercial and public sectors, contextualizing and implementing effective cybersecurity risk management procedures as well as technical controls. So please help me warmly welcome on stage our Senior IT Manager from Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore, Mr. Lionel Chew. Lionel, good morning. The stage is yours.
Morning. Thank you, Carissa, for the introduction. Once again, my name is Lionel, and I am happy to share on Singapore's maritime sector cyber risk management. Before diving into the technicalities, please allow me to summarize the mission objectives undertaken by the Maritime and Port Authority of Singapore. The first is to build a competitive global hub port by ensuring smooth and efficient operations and maintaining a quality flag and port state. Next, MPA promotes and develops Singapore's position as an international maritime center through encouraging the local setup of key shipping activities and maritime ancillary services. And finally, MPA ensures continued safe and open access to and from the Port of Singapore through active participation at international platforms. Achieving Singapore's maritime aspirations require deliberate efforts in planning and investment. Technology plays a key role, which in our view can be categorized into these 5 types of systems. This provides us with a landscape in which we can assess the threats to our ecosystem and address the cyber risks posed towards our efforts. While there is no intelligence that the maritime sector in this region is being targeted at this time, the global maritime domain has had its share of cyber incidents over the last decade, with an escalating frequency of occurrence. Naval Dome reported that February to May 2020 alone saw a 4-fold increase in cyber attacks, highlighting the importance of good cyber risk management, a view which I believe is shared by many in this hall. Therefore, in recognizing that there is no one-size-fits-all to addressing cyber risks in the maritime sector, we must undertake a pragmatic approach towards balancing cybersecurity requirements, efficiency, and costs, which in our view can be achieved through these 4 key areas. First, in the area of governance, the Singapore National Cybersecurity Strategy sets out Singapore's vision, goals, and priorities for cybersecurity. Comprising of 3 strategic pillars, the strategy aims to engender coordinated action and facilitate international partnerships for a resilient and trusted cyber environment. In particular, towards building a resilient infrastructure, the Cybersecurity Act was enacted to strengthen the protection of critical information infrastructure, of which maritime is one of the 11 identified critical sectors. Given the prevalence of cyber incidents and their profound impact to business, organizations should no longer view cybersecurity as a technical IT risk, but a strategic business risk. Hence, it is important for management to recognize and put in place a robust cybersecurity management program. This program should be aimed towards reducing cyber risks through minimizing the impact of cyber incidents, and thus work towards garnering management support for a proactive stance towards cybersecurity risks. It involves developing a set of strategies to address the key security domains and adopting a structured cybersecurity framework to institute processes and implement the strategies. Not to forget allocating the appropriate budgets to protect critical assets and data, as well as to meet relevant regulatory policies and industry standards. In view of the transboundary nature of maritime business, Singapore adopts international standards and guidelines on cybersecurity, including those from the IMO and EU cybersecurity regulations. To that end, MPA supported the research conducted by the Singapore University of Technology and Design in developing a set of cyber risk management guidelines that can be used by IT and OT specialists to assess and enhance the cyber readiness of vessels. With this, the Singapore Registry of Ships Cyber Notation was introduced to award, with the SUTD guidelines as the assessment criteria, vessels that adopt measures to protect their key shipboard systems from cyber attacks. The second key area of training and education, we focus on awareness and industry engagement. In collaboration with the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, MPA ran a series of EDMs to put forth the key messages of cyber and data security. In addition to regular internal phishing exercises, we conducted workshops for MPA officers and the industry to drive awareness and maintain vigilance. For the industry, MPA partnered with the Institutes of Higher Learning to develop customized courses for equipping industry personnel with basic cybersecurity skill sets. Sector-wide tabletop exercises are also conducted regularly to validate incident management capabilities in responding to and recovering from cyber and data-related incidents. The third key area is around information sharing. We are moving towards deeper digital connectivity, and we cannot safeguard our networks and systems alone. It is important for the community to come together to share information that will enhance our preparedness, especially against coordinated attacks that may be directed at the maritime industry. In our view, the time gaps in cyber incident response can be bridged by community through collaborative efforts in the areas with common interests, such as the exchange of actionable information to influence a cybersecurity posture, the continued sharing and updates to cybersecurity best practices, and validation practices of our preparedness in the management of incidents. Towards this effort, MPA's Chief Information Officer leads the Port Authority's CIO Cybersecurity Network. This initiative brings together a community of like-minded port authorities to build linkages and establish a protocol for exchanging cyber information to respond as a collective to potential and active cyber threats. There are currently 11 PACnet members from North America, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia. MPA was also invited by the International Association of Ports and Harbors to develop the first cybersecurity guidelines for ports and port facilities, together with other port authorities and the World Bank. The guidelines launched in 2021, and MPA continues to be part of the group to maintain and update this publication. The final key area involves practicing incident response procedures, starting with an incident management framework with playbooks that cover the various cyber threats, public communication plans, incident reporting structures, and timelines. These plans should then be tested through exercise to validate and improve on preparedness. The resiliency of the organization can concurrently be strengthened by ensuring that business continuity plans are in place to mitigate disruptions and ensure that business can continue to operate. And finally is the regular conduct of risk assessments to continually assess these preparations against the evolving cyber threats. In conclusion, prepare now. With digitalization, cyber risks can no longer be completely avoided. There is no silver bullet, and effort is required to identify the right solution for your business case. Management support determines how cyber resilient a business is. Communicate to earn their understanding and support. Time is of the essence in incident response, so plan and practice your response procedures. And lastly, collaboration can make the difference in preventing an incident or how well it is managed. Right. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chu, for that opening presentation. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us nicely into the second presentation on the cyber risk management in port. Now, a bit of background about our speaker coming on board to tell us more. Now, he is currently responsible for PSA SG's Infocom Technology Division's infrastructure and cybersecurity architecture, as well as technology planning. Now, with over 20 years of IT experience, our speaker has been involved and has led various IT projects from application development to infrastructure planning as well as architecture. With that, please help me to warmly welcome on stage our Assistant Vice President for Infrastructure and Cybersecurity Architecture, PSA Corporation Limited, Mr. Terence Yeo. Mr. Yeo, please.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for having me here today. Lionel has given a very good overview of maritime sectorial perspective of managing cyber risks. For this segment, I will share more from a practitioner's view. Before I start, I'd like to pose a question to all of you. Do you think increasing adoption of emerging technologies in a port ecosystem has any bearing on cyber risks? My name is Terence, and I'll attempt to address this question in the next 10 to 15 minutes of my presentation. Okay, some technical issues here. First, let's take a look at the modern port ecosystem. As a port that's undergoing digitization, one would expect increasing deployment of APIs, IIoT, IoT, and automation technologies to support business initiatives like better productivity, increased data insights, and improving safety standards. Such technology adoptions will radically change the way port users interact with the port. For instance, a ship captain might use 5G or Wi-Fi 6 to wirelessly transfer pay plans from ship to shore systems. Port workers leverage on mobile, tablets, and wearables to conduct safety inspection as well as monitor signs of health hazards which can impact lives. Engineers, remote controlling cranes using OT protocols, modernized with a IT TCP flavor. Suppliers and vendors who frequent the restricted port areas, or at times even remotely connecting to carry out maintenance activities. With all these modern use cases involving IT, OT, and physical, it sure does look increasingly difficult to manage, let alone mitigate cyber risks. So what can a port operator do in view of such mounting challenges? I'd like to borrow a term coined by my CEO, known as Total Security Convergence, to explain an approach a port operator can adopt for managing cyber risks. Total Security Convergence is a cyber mindset to systematically consider IT, OT, and physical risk domains and analyzing them as a whole to derive insights and strategies, thereby mitigating cyber risks. This mindset will need to be overlaid with demands from regulators, both external and internal, who will formulate minimum acceptable baselines governing cyber risks. In PSA's context, it will be CSA's CCOP 2.0, MPA security standards, and PSA's internal IT security standards and policies. These standards will contextualize threats into applicable maritime actionables for follow-up and remediation. On the supply side, we will reference industry best practices such as NIST, Material Attack Framework, and Defense in Depth to work out a people, process, tools plan in elevating cyber defenses and postures. Internally, we have a group cybersecurity master plan that serves as a cyber compass to guide PSA Group forward. In fact, the group cybersecurity master plan was recently awarded CSO 50 for demonstrating outstanding thought leadership and business value. Supporting all this are 5 key pillars, which I elaborate in the next slide. Just a bit of fun fact here, to note that the 5 key pillars are shaded in colors used to reference PSA's mapping to Herman Brain Dominance Instrument Framework, or HBDI in short, as our corporate tool for aligning of communications throughout the organization. In this case, blue refers to analytical, green refers to organize, red refers to people or interpersonal. These 5 key pillars are organized into respective task forces to delve deep into specific areas. First, we have the technology and architecture planning, and it refers to the technical oversight of work streams involving IT, OT, and physical cyber projects. This is a governance unit to standardize and chart technology roadmaps moving forward for total security convergence. Next, we have the compliance operationalization, which deals with how, when translating standards to actionable work streams, as multiple compliance standards may result in overlapping clauses, this unit's main function is to identify, deduplicate, and communicate harmonized implementation methods for the operations team to execute. The Cyber Risk Synchronization is a task force looking across our enterprise risk management framework and ensuring the risk model identified during risk assessments have consistent interpretation. Identity access, administration, and governance is a discipline to instill zero trust principles in a new system design, as well as level up identity management practices. In the current cyber landscape, whereby hackers are actively exploiting identity and credential thefts, the need to safeguard identity has elevated in posture. Multi-factor authentication is a key technology which I highly recommend to enable, as most identity and credential thefts can be mitigated through this technology. Humans are usually the weakest link in cyber defense. This makes uplifting of competency, skills, and awareness a key focus for better cyber resilience. This can be achieved through a coordinated effort to pull together like-minded resources to educate and create outreach programs with the single aim of reducing phishing clicks and facilitating reporting of suspicious emails or behavior to our cyber ops team. By strengthening the human core, cyber risks can be better managed. With the 5 key pillars firmly anchored, we will move on to engaging people who are deeply involved in this ecosystem. In this highly connected pod ecosystem, there are a variety of stakeholders, both internal and external. It's through a deliberate strategy to partner alongside these stakeholders and engage freely on cyber matters to build trust during peacetime. As some examples of peacetime collaborations include performing cyber supply chain assessment to determine N-tier vendor or service provider dependencies. This gives the organization an insight into any single point of dependency, if not treated, can potentially introduce system failure if that component is somewhat compromised. CSA has just published a critical information infrastructure supply chain program in July this year with the aim to help organizations take progressive steps towards reduction of cyber supply chain risks. Another of such peacetime collaboration include tabletop exercises like MPA Cyber Maritime. This is a good test bed to validate sectorial resilience towards cyber attacks and how each stakeholder can chip in to help each other during a crisis. Lastly, within the organization, business continuity planning needs to be sharpened together with customers so that in times of crisis, everybody knows exactly what to do and how to go about doing it. In closing, total security convergence is not just a cybersecurity matter, but rather a collaborative effort amongst business stakeholders, regulators, and management to work alongside a safe and secure tomorrow. To reaffirm this commitment, we have actually created a Captain America-like shield called the Security 360 to signify our collaborative approach towards total security convergence. I wish you all the best in your cyber journey, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Terence Yeo, for that presentation. Indeed, reminds me of yesterday's ending quote, collaboration is the fuel for the future. Looks like we're not going to be able to do this alone and by ourselves, which is why we're gathered here to exchange ideas, perspectives, and to dialogue with each other. Now, our next presenter will be talking about securing maritime infrastructure, a little bit of background about our speaker. Now, his general research interests lie in the broad area of cybersecurity, including, but not limited to, security for AI, wireless technologies, and Internet of Things. Now, together with his student, he discovered swine tooth and brack tooth, the families of Bluetooth vulnerabilities that do affect billions of devices worldwide. You can also find his research being featured in Wired, PC Magazine, Hackers News, among many others. With that, ladies and gentlemen, please help me warmly welcome from Singapore University of Technology and Design, Professor Sudipta Chattopadhyay.
Thank you very much for the introduction. So Terence and Lionel have given very good overview about the practitioner's point. I'm an academic, and I will try to outline how academic and practitioner can work towards this effort together. So We have seen that the cyber attacks in maritime sector have increased by a significant margin in the last few years. So cyber attacks that we are talking about in the maritime sector is no longer just a theory. So it's actually real and it's concrete. So we have an urgent need to protect our maritime infrastructure from cyber attacks. We at Singapore University of Technology and Design work together with industry as well as many agencies to develop security solution for different critical infrastructure sector, including maritime. So at Singapore University of Technology and Design, we have iTrust, as I said. It's a national satellite of excellence for securing and cybersecurity research for critical infrastructure. We have built a 10 years roadmap for cybersecurity research focusing on the maritime sector. Broadly, we have 3 different phases of this research. In phase 1, which we have already completed, we have developed a detailed and comprehensive guideline for cyber risk management study in maritime and focusing on shipboard operation technology system. In phase 2, what we will be working on is to develop a maritime shipboard OT testbed, which will focus on cybersecurity research, training professionals, developing new educational programs, as well as validating technologies that would be developed for securing our maritime sector. In phase 3, we would focus on new techniques for discovering vulnerabilities in shipboard OT system, as well as developing research programs for developing security solution on shipboard OT system for maritime infrastructure. So let's first zoom into phase 1 about the cyber risk management study that we had developed earlier this year and released it to public. Why do we need such a comprehensive guideline? So there are some guidelines, and you can find them mostly for policymakers, decision makers. However, there was a lack of guideline in Singapore, which can be used by port authorities as well as ship owners. Towards this angle, we have developed the cyber risk management guideline, and we have released it. So let me give you a little bit more details about the cyber risk management study and the guidelines that we have developed. So this was briefly outlined in Lionel's presentation. And this particular guideline now is available in iTrust website for everyone to download and read about. It's an 85-page comprehensive report which talks about different sort of attacks that can happen in different components of maritime shipboard OT system. Broadly, it focuses on the 4 components: the navigation system, which is, for example, GPS, AIS, that gives ship accurate navigation data; the communication system, for example, wireless LAN and 5G going forward, that would allow ship-to-ship and ship-to-shore communication; the cargo management system that allows tracking of different cargoes; the propulsion control system, electric power control system, which allow different vessel operation. Now, there are this operation, but as we know, many of these operations are fully or partially controlled by computer. And we know that this computer can be attacked or hacked by some external entity, as well as by if there is some insider threat. What we do in this cyber risk management study is to provide detailed attack vectors for each of these 4 major components, as well as we outline the potential mitigation strategies. Additionally, we also talk about the level of severity for each threat and we also talk about the likelihood of threat. So I certainly encourage all of you to take a look at this guide and see how this can be adopted by the ship owners. We have also organized 4 different webinars talking about and detailing about this cyber risk management. And finally, also alluding a little bit about our testbed that's going to be developed. This testbed, as we discussed, is going to be in our phase 2 for cybersecurity research in maritime. This brings us to our phase 2 and the testbed. So again, why do we need another testbed? So there are so many different types of OT testbed, but do we really have one for cybersecurity research in maritime? The answer is we don't have. And this particular testbed is going to focus on cybersecurity research and training. Our plan now is to release the initial deliverable by end of 2023. Maybe some of the parts of this testbed will not be ready, but we will have an idea how to use it for further research. And we plan to launch the final testbed by end of 2024. This brings us some issue with the changer. Thank you. So as we talked about, so we have an urgent need to develop security solution. However, we lack a comprehensive testbed which would allow us to validate technologies before the deployment. And in iTrust at Singapore University of Technology and Design, we are going to create the world's first testbed focusing on the cybersecurity for shipboard OT system. So this would be focusing on educating professionals as well as educating professionals as well as developing the new educational program that focus on maritime cybersecurity. Not last but not the least, obviously, we also want to promote scientific research in this area so that new cybersecurity solution can be developed. So with this and our further effort on developing new technologies for maritime, we hope to contribute to several efforts that would lead to cyber safety at sea. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Professor Sudipta. I would like to invite you to remain here on stage, and we'll show you to your seat on the panel session here. Our ushers will take you to your seat. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, in just a while, I will give you some details about how you can participate. But for now, I'm pleased to be welcoming on stage our 2 panelists to join us back here. We have Mr. Lionel Chu once again. Please join us on stage. And Mr. Terence Yao, please welcome back on stage. And of course, I'm moderating this segment. We're very pleased to have Deputy Chairman of National Maritime Safety at Sea Council Singapore, Executive Director of Singapore Shipping Association, Mr. Michael Poon. Good to have you back on stage with us. So before, we will give a moment for our panelists, moderators to settle on stage. Now, for how you're about to participate in this panel session, we're going to be flashing on screen. Are we able to? The QR code, that's right. Okay, so you can scan the QR code to log in or www.pigeonhole.at. Just log in our event passcode, safety at sea, and you're pretty much good to go. If you do face any difficulties, just wave your hands and any of our personnel on the side should be able to give you some assistance. All right, and I think we are all set. The topic is cybersecurity at sea. I will now be handing the time over to Mr. Michael Poon to take us through. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Well, so first of all, a very warm welcome and good morning to all of you for taking the time to come in to this segment in regards to cybersecurity. Now, I know that most of you are probably very much fatigued and jaded, as we all are when we talked about it yesterday, in terms of how do we make people and our crew a bit more, safety culture conscious and everything else. But cybersecurity continues to be and will be the mainstay as the shipping industry is hurtling at almost light speed towards digitalization as well as modernization at the same time, right? Now, this morning, if you notice, the speakers were carefully curated in a way that you are looking at from, first of all, a governmental agency perspective, where Lionel began to speak and talk about what they have to do. And then followed by a practitioner, which is the PSA, the Port Authority, rather the Port of Singapore, and from Terrence's viewpoint, how they're actually practicing that from a very established organization. Now then followed by a professor from an academic perspective, but also from a perspective where he is also seeing the fact that while it is true that we do have an overall cybersecurity infrastructure being in place, there are legislations, there are policies, but therein still lies a certain pool of people or businesses in the sector that is still probably at a loss or do not know where to start. And this is where the academic benefits come in. Their research papers, their papers that they put out in terms of the guidelines would likely form a very nice roadmap guidance for any business that would like to endeavor on that cybersecurity roadmap journey, right? So I think with that, hopefully I'll frame that for all of you folks, and if you do have questions that you want to ask during the presentation, during the discussion that we have, do again, please look at the screen and log into that QR code and put in your questions, and we'll then try to cater to it all. So I think without further ado, I'm going to start with Lionel. Lionel, you start by saying, no one size fits all. I think everybody agrees on that. It's really important for us to understand that, cybersecurity infrastructure, it's pretty much something that we all have to look at it in a very holistic manner itself. You talk about the fact that from a national legislation perspective, there's been a lot of pillars that's in place. Now, I noticed that you came up and you introduced yourself, and I saw that, I'm very pleased to see that you are the senior IT manager. Many a times we've all in our past lives as well, in our present lives, that when a company says, okay, I will start on a cybersecurity policy and regulations and guidelines, and it always inevitably falls into the shoulders of the IT manager, right? And never has it been, falling on the proper shoulders of actually the CIO, or even, in fact, it should be the entire CXO level of the company. It must be a company culture, just like safety at sea culture is what it is. So I just thought maybe I would like to ask you from your position, do you find and do you see support from the senior management in the area of cybersecurity from an MPA level?
For MPA, definitely there is very strong management support. I mean, even from as a authority ourselves, we are related to the government. From that government perspective, there is also a lot of support, a lot of talk, a lot of initiatives to try to improve our cybersecurity posture, and to also try to engage industries in terms of bringing forth this conversation about cybersecurity and risk management. After all, we do understand that the way of doing business is becoming more and more digital. Yeah. I mean, productivity has seen benefits, and right now we are trying to exploit data. So in that sense, there is a lot of room and a lot of concern over the cybersecurity aspect. So as MPA ourselves, we do also leverage a lot on technology. And for that, the same concerns for managing our cyber risks comes into play as well. And our management is very aware of that. It's being discussed even at the board committee levels. So I can say that support-wise, there is no lack, at least in MPA.
All right, Lionel, so that's pretty good. I was just actually, as you're talking, I was looking at some of the questions that's been flying in fast and furious, and where is it? Okay, So I wanted to ask you this because it's relevant to what you just mentioned before. This is posted by Anonymous. It says here, what is the, let me see if I can put it on screen for you folks. What is the authority doing to help businesses to adopt cybersecurity requirements? You know, you mentioned about in your presentation, you talk about the fact that you have done phishing workshops, right? And obviously, I think these are all internal tabletop exercises, but from an external reaching perspective, I think the questions being asked is on the screen, as you can see, what is the authority doing to help businesses to adopt cybersecurity requirements? Can you elaborate on that, please, Lionel?
Right. MPA has done much in making guidelines with regards to cybersecurity management available to the industry. So in co-development of the IAPH guidelines, in supporting SUTD in their research, and even awarding the SRS cyber notation, we do see that this is how we can move forth, or rather progress in this conversation in our relationship between regulator and business. Even in the MPA digitalization playbook, which MPA co-developed with SSA and IMDA, that actually helps businesses to adopt digitalization with cybersecurity in mind. A dimension that was highlighted by the Digitalization Acceleration Index that has the highest impact but largest gap within SMEs. And therefore, there is the sea transport digitalization plan to really help these companies to adopt digitalization in a secure way. So there's funding through that plan, through that program as well. And we hope that businesses would see this as the support that we are actually helping them to adopt whichever cybersecurity requirement that they see that they require.
Okay, Lionel, so I think that's good. So at this point in time, I'm going to pull in Professor. You know, Professor, I'm just going to tease you, right? Because you, and it's just in jest. You know, you talk about, you know, academics and research institutions are always so in love with test beds. All the time it's all test beds, right? So why do we need another test bed? But I think it's a follow-on to this question that's been still on the screen here. We heard about Lionel, what he has mentioned from a government's perspective. But I think at the end of the day, it really boils down to what can the businesses benefit from it, right? There is a government policy that's in place. The agency, MPA, that is governing the C sector is putting this in place. And I'll come to you in a short while, Terence. I'm sure you can give us some snippets of the practice that you have put in place for PSA. But from an academic perspective, right, surely there are people out there, and people that are dialing in as well at the same time on the virtual screen, are wondering and say, okay, I've heard enough of this. I want to start this out. I need to have some level of a guidance. So do you see, you know, when you have done the guidance in terms of what you have put in place and published for, which is a guidebook and a guideline for the cybersecurity risk, but it's also on shipboard operating systems. Are there, from your perspective, are there also other guidelines that can be transported to a maritime shipping business that is not always 100% shipboard?
I think it can be. Actually, for maritime, in my perspective, a lot of things are currently not very known. So it's quite open. So that's why we focus on studying the system first. So what we think about, so right now for shipboard OT system, perhaps this is one of the critical component for which we have released some sort of high-level guidelines. However, we believe that with the testbed, we would learn more about the system and how they can impact the other parts. And based on that, there could be further guidelines that we can produce. But right now, yes, I think there is a possibility. But to be honest, we don't have so much concrete ideas how to do that.
Very good. Now, I'm going to come back to Lionel again, because you had mentioned before, you talked about and shared with us that, there is this exciting new journey that's been embarked upon, which is this cyber notation, and mainly for the ship registries under the Singapore flag. Can you just share with us, which is also a question that was being asked, how many ships have been registered under the MPA cyber notation? That's number one. But number two, when was this being rolled out, and how will it be administered by any recognized organization? So 2 questions, tackling all at one go.
Thank you for the question. I must say upfront that I do not have the number, and neither do I deal with this on a day-to-day basis. But there has been increasing interest, at least in what Singapore and MPA is doing with regards to awarding vessels who actually take good, or rather adopt best practices in managing their vessels' cyber risks. As for how many ships have actually been noted, I think there is still room for more. I don't have the numbers on hand. In terms of providing, or rather, how can ROs use this, it's really a way for industry to decide on how much value they would see this notation. After all, the business side of the house, if they do see that there is this risk and there is effort to mitigate those risks, then perhaps there is room for perhaps grants and other things to that effect. But unfortunately, I can't comment much on that area as of now. And hopefully our other divisions within MPA would be able to offer answers. All right,
so that's good, because actually I was going to ask you another question which was submitted by Mr. Quack. Are there incidences and statistics in regards to cyber attack which affected safety at sea? Do you have that? And if you can share it with us, that'll be wonderful, because it's also in alignment with the theme of what we have this week, which is safety at sea. Lionel, do you have any incidents that you can share with us?
Well, it's not yet. I would say not yet specific to a direct relation to a cyber attack. But in that area, we do see that there is an increasing risk, especially with the reliance on technology, whether as we move towards more remote pilotage situations or even autonomous vessels, we do expect such risks to really come forth more on the forefront.
Yeah.
So far, we have seen things like GPS spoofing,
yes.
Things affecting maybe your internal shipboard IT systems, but they are generally mitigated by the people and personnel on board.
Yes.
So, in terms of the reliance on technology to actually operate the ship, perhaps it doesn't, at this point in time, pose as large an impact, or rather it is already mitigated. But once we start to move further away from the manual controls, or even putting more layers in between the operator and the actual physical system itself, then that risk conversation will have to be looked at again.
So I think it's good that you mentioned and talked about the fact that, and you shared a little bit on the area in regards to an automated or maybe remote piloting that will come into the play. And this is where we definitely see the importance of making sure that we've got a very secure and very robust cybersecurity framework that will help to protect us in case of any mishaps or any cyber hijack that may take place. Which then brings me to Terence. Terence, you started by sharing the overview of the modern pod ecosystem, which I saw in the slide. And you spoke a little bit fast, and maybe for the audience as well. You shared the 5 pillars, and you said that it was color-coded purposefully. It was in blue, green, and red, and it was color-coordinated because PSA's policies to make sure that you can reinforce that and enhance a call for action. Maybe just for my curiosity, can you repeat that again for me? What does the blue color stand for, and what does the green one stands for, and the red one stands for?
Sure. So how we actually look at color coding some of this is actually is because ultimately whenever you want to communicate to staff, right, it's very important to have certain alignment to some of the corporate policies on what we want to do moving forward. So we adopted HPDI as our framework.
What is HPDI?
HPDI stands for Herman Brain Directive. Information. Brain. It's a whole brain thinking type of concept.
All right. So, take notes, everyone. Take note.
So there are a total of 4 quadrants there. There are blue. Blue stands for details, right? Detailing, right? Have an eye for details.
Right.
Right. Green stands for organize. You are a very organized person, so you can do step by step, procedural in it all. Yellow is actually a bit more visionary. That means you look at the crystal ball and be able to project what's going to come, in the near future or in the future itself. Then red is a very interpersonal type of color, right? So all these 4 colors denote the way we function as a whole, right? So that's where we adapted this from a corporate point of view to use it as a communication tool, right? Whenever we want to push out any policies of sort to the organization.
That's good to know. I have my staff here, my deputy. Just remember next time when we have our policies to have it in that color coding, okay? So we need to make sure of that. Okay, I digress. But Terence, you had also on a slide that you talked about, which I think you color coded it quite correctly. It's about ship to shore, a use case where you talk about bay plans, right? Did I miss the color? Was it in red, or was it in green, or was it in yellow? And maybe can you share with us more in detail on how does it work? So for ship to shore use case as an example, when a shipping line transfers an EDI file like a bay plan to a port, how will your terminology that you use, defense in depth, be able to guard against, for example, a dirty or an unclean device when interfacing with the port systems that you have? Can you share with us on that area?
Sure. So for the current landscape, typically how the ship captains, when they come to shore, they will need to transfer their bay plans, basically what is actually inside the ship itself, how are the containers lay up and all, right, to the ports, so that the port can actually proceed to conduct the operations to make sure that the correct boxes are loaded and loaded respectively. So in that aspect, based on today's context, right? We ask the ship planners or the ship captains to come to shore, to plug their USBs onto a scanning station. That's where we do all the necessary checks, because as part of a defense in depth, we cannot really trust what the data that's coming from the vessel. No offense, but that's how we want to actually safeguard everybody's interest, right? So through that, after the files have been scanned correctly, and then we can actually move on to uploading into our PONET system for processing and so on and so forth. But moving forward, when we talk about using 5G and Wi-Fi 6, right? The defense will still be similar in nature, because there will be scanning stations virtually, of course. Now it's no longer physical, right? Scanning stations over the air to actually do some of those profiles, cyber posturing before the files get into the system itself.
Which brings me now back to Professor. Professor, you talk about the fact that there's an ongoing plan to look at a MARI-OT. I presume it's a short form of Maritime Operations Technology, MARI-OT system that's in place, right? Tell us a bit more about how is this maritime MARI-OT testbed going to be used by whom? Used and also by whom? How is it going to be used and actually by whom?
We mainly plan, I think, yeah, okay, so there are, I think, 3 possible ways to use this testbed, or 3 possible stakeholders. So one could be industries who are developing cybersecurity solution, and sometimes it is in fact hard to validate their technologies, in real ship. So this could be a platform for validating their technologies.
Yes.
Second, obviously, that's definitely we plan is to train the professional impact, to show concrete attacks, how they can be replicated in the test bed, and what sort of physical impact they can create, such that they know like what sort of measure that they should take when such attacks happen.
Yeah.
And third, of course, for research, so this testbed would be open for all to contribute to develop new technologies. In fact, create new knowledge in this particular domain, which we don't know yet. And that includes not just developing new solution to secure our infrastructure,
Yeah.
but also for people who are hackers. So to find new vulnerabilities which are not known yet, we call 0 day. So typically we organize in iTrust this event where we in fact invite different red-white teams who can actually try different sort of techniques to hack our test bed. So there are currently different other test bed in our iTrust, but this Maritime would be included in such event for the hackers to try and infiltrate into the system. And this would allow us to find out, not just new attack vectors, attack paths, as well as see how robust are the current defense.
Okay, just stay on that for a while. I just wanted to ask, and this is actually also a question that just came, that's out on the screen, out on the pigeonhole here. And one of the things that which I feel it's realistic, it's real life, is that can you offer perspective? Because how would a ship crew who is on board at sea do to help prevent cybersecurity incidents? Because bear in mind, as it's written here, they have very limited knowledge in cybersecurity other than their tasks and work that's assigned at hand. From an SUTD's perspective, when you go about playing for this MARI-OT, do you actually factor that in mind, that you are looking at a user pool who may not necessarily be educated, and maybe I shouldn't use who may not be intimately knowledgeable of what needs to be done, and they not be cyber security aware. So from your perspective, do you plan to actually incorporate that to make sure that these pool of people are also being well taken care of, that they understand what needs to be done to preserve that level of integrity within the ship itself?
Yeah, definitely. So certainly we are not only targeting people who are like coders or technical expert. So someone who understands the ship. So to make them aware of these attacks and defense in a much higher level. So one of the effort towards this line or towards this direction, what we are planning is to connect our testbed to the Maritime, the simulator that we have at Singapore Poly.
Yes.
So that would allow us to, in fact, see like what are the impact of this attack, and hopefully we will be able to project the impact of this attack at a much higher level, who are not technical expert. So more at the operation level, I would say. So we. At this point, I could say that we certainly don't only plan to train the technical experts, so that's more about developing new courses, but this is certainly to train the maritime professional who are actually operating in the ship.
Yes. Yeah.
How exactly this would be done, of course, there are so many loose ends right now, but one of our plan is to, in fact, project this through simulation that we already have in Singapore.
That's good to know. I'm going to switch gear a bit because I've got this very interesting question that just came up here from Lieutenant Commander Lard, Australian International Liaison Officer. So I'm going to ask this question, and perhaps, I don't know, maybe it's either Lionel or someone can answer this. What is the government's role in informing corporations on the specific nature of cyber threats, the actors, and the intent behind the threat? Now, before you answer that question, I also want to share that we are a Singapore Shipping Association. We also are the recipient of fairly regular updates on some of the cyber threats that are going on, which we also pump out back to the industry. And we have this cooperative arrangement that we've made with both PSA, rather the major port operators, PSA and Jurong Port, as well as MPA, so that we can quickly push it out to our shipping community so that they are aware of what's going on at the same time. So that's one way that we are making the community aware before they fall victim to that area. But I think I'd like to maybe perhaps ask Lionel to elaborate more further on the specific nature of the cybersecurity incidents that have taken place, and how do you actually describe that threat, and what's the intent behind it?
I think the government's perspective is for sure national level. So we will be dealing with a view of how a specific, or rather how cyber threats or intent may impact the nation as a whole. So for MPA, when we issue alerts or advisories to our stakeholders, maritime stakeholders, we come from that lens as to how a certain threat or intent of a threat could impact the domain itself. Perhaps there may be certain details that are not openly shared due to SecOp reasons, but we do cultivate a relationship with our partners, with our stakeholders, with our licensees, in a way that helps them to understand that when we do issue something, it's of a concern.
Yeah.
And in doing so, the businesses, the corporations themselves know how to align towards responding towards those alerts and advisories that we do issue.
Yes.
So I think this community effort, the relationships that we build is important, so that such conversations or even exchange of information can be forthcoming without that concern about a government, your regulator, right? So are you going to hit me with this down the line?
Of course, yeah.
We want to protect, the industry itself. So when we ask, when we talk about exchange of information, it's really to that end, to that effect. And we hope to build those linkages to have that common level of understanding as to what we want to achieve, and then execute accordingly.
Maybe I'll just add on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we are great partners, right? So basically, to add on to what Lionel has mentioned, right, MPA has periodically issued sectorial threat profile that actually describes the threat actors, what the emerging threats is coming, right, and the different types of situations that we need to be aware of. So that's the first part, right? So of course, I did mention during my presentation just now, we do conduct regular tabletop exercises, and such tabletop exercises, if you ever participated in one, basically is trying to test out how, from either an organization point of view, or from a sectorial point of view, how do you respond to such emerging threats that's coming, or even threats that are already knocking on the door, right? So these are parts and parcels of government's involvement with the industry to help elevate the posture, everyone's posture together, because we are in it together, right? So we have to defend as one and attack as one.
Yeah, so Terence and Lionel, I recall that in both of your presentation slides, as you just recently mentioned just now, Terence, is that we are kind of pleased to see that both the MPA and the PSA, has conducted tabletop exercises, right? I think in reality for all of us is that, all right, so I'm going to roll that back maybe a few steps for the both of you. So when I conduct a tabletop exercise, I have one thing in mind. And that one thing in mind is that first line of defense, are my staff on the ball? Have they really understood how important that they individually are responsible for the defense and secure systems for the office that we operate in? So it's good to know that you guys are doing a tabletop exercises, it's done, and then we look at how fast we recover, how fast we respond. But what about the staff? The one that inevitably click on that link. Can you share with us what is there a counseling being done? His bonus is going to be docked, he's going to get any promotion. I don't know. Can you please tell us?
Of course, we would try to have more carrots than sticks. So, as part of our awareness program, we do conduct phishing exercises on our internal staff. And as a remedial for those who do fall prey, we do try to educate them, whether it's through e-learning, through attendance of courses, and monitor their progress over time. So that is one way that we can try to uplift our own staff's vigilance. However, we must say that the content of, maybe in this example, the phishing emails are becoming more sophisticated. They appeal to your staff's personal interests. You see, I mean, now we do see about even phishing SMSs, asking you to rather provide information about your expected shipping deliveries, etc. So these are the things that we also try to target with the intent that if the staff, the officer, is already vigilant and cautious even in their own personal engagements.
That's right.
That can also translate to vigilance at the workplace. So it's really helping them to connect the dots that the behaviors of your personal habits and things like that can also help you in maintaining the cybersecurity posture amongst your staff at the workplace.
Maybe I just add on, right? So on top of awareness programs, right? I think the organization itself will also need to come prepared to say that, what if, to simulate the scenario whereby the staff really click, so what, right? So I guess the detection and response and putting forth technology tools to help to create a safe environment for staff to work in, because frankly, we do not want to penalize staff for clicking phishing emails. Sometimes it really looks like the real thing, right? So how can from a technology viewpoint be able to help and investment in tools to help to create a safe environment so that they can actually operate in? Yeah.
Okay, so but let me share what I do. And I run a small trade association. We're a non-profit. We don't have a lot of money. We don't have a lot of sophisticated staff. I have some staff that's right here in front of me right now. So occasionally what I do is that I used to send, I would send an email. Excuse me, sorry. I would send an email to all the staff, and it starts very simply by saying, "Dear all staff, you do not have a long-lost uncle or auntie from a foreign country that has passed away and they have bequeathed you with their immense wealth of $5 billion. Number two, please be reminded that you're not that fortunate or lucky. You didn't win that lottery that someone bought for you in Spain or in the US. And then so please do not click on that link that you're looking for. And if there's any other doubt, always come to us to seek clarity and so on. So I think it's a simple message, always with a bit of a humor, so that I think the staff can internalize and understand that. I think that's going to be key for all of us for it to take place. Okay, switch gear a little bit more. Lionel, you last spoke and talked about it's a community effort. It is a community effort, right, to have it take place. And I want to bring this point about community effort because there's a question I'm going to put on the screen right now from Mr. Quack that talks about, and it may be for Terence to answer. You know, because PSA talks about this whole total security convergence, and it's about community effort. Obviously, PSA being a pod operator, you have an ecosystem of users. So how could the PSA total security convergence benefit the maritime industry, particularly the small, medium enterprises with regards to safety at sea and cybersecurity? I think you know that for many of the SMEs that are out there listening in, they've always have this eternal list of reasons of why they're always challenged, right? They don't have the resource, they don't have the right talent, they don't have the time, they don't have the money, they don't have the expertise, right? So all of the no, don't have, cannot do is giving them, that burden that someday soon they may be a victim. So Terence, please, can you share with us? Did you include the SMEs?
Okay, so wow, this is a pretty big question. Yeah, so when I presented on total security convergence, it's actually a mindset whereby we need to be aware. All right, we need to be aware of the type of assets that we are protecting, because in today's context, there's a lot of things. There's IT. Last time there's also OT, but it's now OT got IT flavors, right? So it becomes a bit more scary in that sense. Right? IT, OT, and physical. So by having the visibility across assets in all these three areas, then you have a better chance at defending them, right? Because I think in all fairness, organizations may not know, right? There are some assets lying in there, there's IP addresses, and typically those are the weakest link within the chain, right? So back to this question on how can we benefit the maritime industry, SMEs. I think from a PSA perspective, what we do is that we will protect. Also meaning we will look at things that coming into our turf, and of course, if let's say there's certain malicious attempts, that we see that's coming from the maritime SMEs, we'll notify them. Yeah. Right. We will also try to educate how best can you eradicate some of these risks within your organization. So for instance, for our PONET system, right, the online PONET system, we have introduced multi-factor authentication, all right, and that, frankly, as part of that initiative, that is with the intention to protect the maritime SMEs, the shippers, the liners who needs to connect to the system, so that their credentials are well preserved. Because typically, credential thefts are the ones that's very prevalent. And through the use of multi-factor authentication, we can actually eliminate most of them, right? Especially if you are using O365, I think Microsoft has also recently enabled this security by default setting. And what this means is that your users will need to have a multi-factor authentication into Microsoft O365 in order for you to work, right? So I do urge everyone who has not turned that feature on, please go turn it on, right? This will save you some money down the road.
Terence, thanks for sharing that nugget information. Professor, this is where I need to also pull you in, because I think the industry also at this point in time are waiting in eager anticipation of this Mary OT testbed you're looking towards too. But I think more importantly is that until, and this is a great question that came up here, I'm going to put it on the screen as well, until the testbed has been completed, are there any interim guidelines that both the MPA and SUTD working together can issue to ship managers and owners, and how will this be communicated to the community altogether?
So I think the cyber risk management study is certainly one of them, which provides a lot of information about the different attack vectors and potential mitigation strategies. So I guess as we develop the testbed, I guess we would start knowing more things about the system, and intermediate guidelines can be developed. But as of now, I think the cyber risk management study is perhaps the concrete deliverable that can be used as of now. But what I could say is that the testbed is not like one-off thing, or it's not like something which is one shot. So there are many different stages which I haven't discussed. So in general, there is a hardware part, there is a software part, there is a simulation part. So I think the hardware part can be ready much before as compared to the timeline. So those things, for example, can be used as an intermediate step. So because some of the things in the testbed we cannot replicate in a room.
Yeah.
So they have to be combined with some sort of software models, for example, for cargo or fuel propulsion, all those things. But the hardware could be ready much before. But what I expect is that the integration between this hardware, the software model, and the simulation will take a lot of time as compared to just, the building the hardware part of the testbed. So at least that could be something intermediary that could be used.
Well, Professor, thank you for that. I think you see a comment that has been put in place by Captain Avish, who contributed here, and he's saying that he believes it's a wonderful idea to link the MARI-OT testbed to the navigation and cargo operations simulators, because that way the ship staff can handle real-time security threats during critical operations.
Yes.
I think with that in mind, I want to go back to this cyber notation, liner that you spoke about, because I think it was first raised by Quack, and I thought it was a good question. I think the following question on the screen I'm going to put out is this: is the MPA enforcing all other flag states in terms of cyber notation requirements to apply to also non-Singapore flag vessels? Because particularly they are coming to Singapore as well. Lionel.
Right. The cyber notation is really Singapore's Registry of Ships, Ship Registry of Singapore initiative. So enforcement-wise, or rather it's not really an enforcement, it's really an encouragement at this point in time for ship owners, for vessels to adopt those cybersecurity best practices. This is really in line with what IMO has issued with regards to risk assessments. So as to in the future, whether or not this will apply to all non-Singapore flag vessels, I think we will continue to observe this space and see how the industry as a whole move and progress towards being more cyber secure.
Yeah, so I just posted one for you just to put you on the edge of your seat. So does MPA foresee any additional flag state requirements for cybersecurity training for mariners or certifications to obtain a flag state endorsement on a national license to sail on into a Singapore flag vessel? So I think it's a really great question. So I thought maybe you should answer that.
Well, it seems like requirements are the easy way out, right?
Yes.
Just in order to get everyone on the same page, we just implement more requirements. But that is not the perspective that we take. What we hope to achieve is really, like I mentioned earlier, the shift in personal mindsets and habits, so as to influence how they operate, within the operation environments, where the workplace. Right now, we do not, of course, have any requirements for cyber training
Yes.
for seafarers, etc. But we do see that it is a good thing for them to learn as well. Just like the simulators under Marriott, it helps to cultivate a habit or even some experience in identifying what could be a cyber risk, what could be a perhaps cyber event, and from there, at least raise an alert, raise a notification that, hey, I'm observing an anomaly, right? So this has, in my view, wider ranging implications. And I think starting at the root cause, or rather the root itself in personal habits, is the right way to go.
No, I think when you end up by saying it's really a personal habit and it's the right way to go, which I'm going to switch gear now to Terence. You had shared with us about the entire convergence of security systems from a PSA perspective. And maybe you can share with us some snippets and insights, because I think it's also could help to answer some of the questions which is being posed out here. And that is, for partnerships with key stakeholders from a PSA perspective, can you share with us a strategy of how this can be done effectively? Because obviously, we all know that PSA has a lot of customers and key stakeholders. So how do you share that strategy? Can you let us know?
Sure. I'll just share 3 E's. So the first E is engage. So I think in all collaboration and partnership, engagement with touch points with the relevant stakeholders is mandatory, right? So we do conduct regular touch points or meetings with some of even the regulators, our customers, our partners, and so on and so forth. So that's where we provide a forum for partners to actually come forth to say that, hey, look, this is what we intend to do, right? And give some visibility towards a roadmap of what both sides can actually come together to collaborate to do some of this work together. So that's the first E. So next I have the second E is to entice, right? So to entice them is to build up this community. So with this community or kampong, right? With this kampong spirit, that's where we have a group of like-minded organizations that you say to come together, say, look, cybersecurity is really an issue, right? And how do we best address them? So we do come together through this kampong, right? To do a bit of mind share of what type of technologies do you use? How do you actually prevent against this type of threat? So it's through such a community, that's where we build trust, right? And such communities have to be very open about it, because there's no hidden agenda there, and through that we hope to elevate everyone's cybersecurity posture through such a community itself. And lastly, the last E is to enable. Right, to enable the stakeholders with cyber knowledge and know-how, so that everyone can actually, the whole team can actually defend as one and attack as one.
Wow, I'm acronym disabled today. Yesterday we had 3 C's from the chief executive of MPA, right? Anyone recall that one was crisis something? All right, maybe I'm getting a brain fog because I was a victim of COVID-19. But Terence, thank you for that. The 3 E's that you're looking at: engage and enable and entice. So that's key for all of us. We've got less than a minute left to go, and I just thought maybe I put this on the screen because I saved this for the last. This is a question that came out, which I think is a good question to ponder as we end this panel discussion. So can I have the people to help me with this one? It's the one that has the most votes. Is this on the screen here? It says here, how can we be less reactive and more proactive in cybersecurity? So last thoughts from the gentleman on the panel here. Again, let's start with Professor, please.
I guess that's a very general question. For us, academic, we would say that we start looking, I would say there is no end of making finding issues or vulnerabilities in system. So if I try to answer in one sentence, I would say that we need to stop looking for vulnerabilities and patch them. We need to build system in a way assuming that vulnerabilities will already exist, and we would have some fallback solution such that we can counter them.
Okay, that's good. So no bashing, just build the system for them to use. Yeah? Lionel.
Right. My view is that I'm glad Terence brought up the sectoral threat profile earlier. Being prepared. So when you prepare, you go through the process of assessing your landscape for risks, for threats. And that sectoral threat profile helps to inform the stakeholders as to what are the threats, the vectors, the actors, and their tool sets that can impact your particular business. So in the process of preparing, that is how you become proactive. And also, it helps with your incident response times. You're not reacting to situations, but you know what to look for, even through concepts like detection in depth. Right. So that's my view.
All right, Terence, you?
Okay, so basically, cybersecurity should never be viewed as an afterthought, right? So why are we always reacting to cybersecurity? It's because we think that cybersecurity is second priority, right? So, but if you look
Left to the IT manager.
So all your C-suite executive, please listen in. Yeah. So cybersecurity is everyone's problem, right? So, but of course, having said that, with that, we need to be aware of the type of assets that we're protecting, because you cannot protect what you do not know, right? So when you do not know or you don't bother, right, that's where you become very reactive, right? So being proactive is getting control, having certain control over the type of assets that you have, and understanding the type of vulnerabilities and type of defenses that you have also, right? So that you can know exactly what to do, and when even a cybersecurity incident does really happen.
So Terence, Lionel, Professor, thank you for wrapping that up. But I want to do one last wrap up, because it's actually a question which I'll turn into a statement for you folks. It's actually on the screen here. I'm just going to use this, if you can help me with that. So you don't have to answer that question, yeah? I'm just going to just put it out there for this perspective that we want the audience to take away with, right? And it is true. Today, we have learned a lot, right? The Ukraine-Russian crisis, geopolitical scenario will likely and will continue to create a lot of potential threats for cybersecurity, not in Singapore, maybe sooner or later, but your ships are sailing to these areas, and they are going to be susceptible to such a potential risk that's going to be in place. I think the key takeaway is that when we talk about cybersecurity, don't ever stop to think that I am not going to be part of the victim. It's not a matter of when, or actually it's a matter of when, and when will it happen and how fast it will happen to all of you. So that's the takeaway. I want to thank everyone for submitting all the questions that we have here. I'm so sorry that we didn't have a chance to go through all of them, but I do hope that, and I thank you for putting those questions in. And I'm going to maybe ask the organizer. There are certain questions that I thought were really, really good that maybe we should get back to the people or post it on the post-event website to see how those questions can be answered. So once again, thank you so much, panelists, for doing this. And over back to you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Michael Poon, and to our panelists, Mr. Lionel Chu, Mr. Terence Yeo, as well as Professor. I'd like to invite you for a photo taking together. Okay. So we've sat for a little while. Shall we stand, perhaps?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll get the photographers to position you, our two photographers here. All right, thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you for that spirited exchange and debate. Well, the good news is we actually do have some time in terms of networking with each other. I've received news that our lunch will be ready at 12 noon, so that's a little bit more time, and lunch will just be behind. So that gives us more time to sit around and maybe go around tables and network and perhaps continue the conversation that has got us thinking this morning. Well, that's it. Just a few things. I think 2 more things I'd like to share with you. While it's still fresh in your mind, would love to get your feedback so we know what's working for you and what's not. So just scan the QR code that you see right here on the screen and just help us to input your thoughts quickly into that digital form. At the same time, as mentioned, lunch will be at 12. And if you have signed up for the plenary that's happening, it'll be at 1 o'clock. So do join us. More engaging exchanges as well as panel sessions for you to participate this afternoon. So that's really all that we have for this morning's Maritime Cybersecurity Dialogue. I hope it's been engaging for you, as well as enabled you to feel hopeful for what's ahead in terms of cybersecurity journey. And hopefully the next thing is to entice you to continue to stay with us and continue the dialogue. So thank you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen. We will now dismiss for the network and lunch at 12. Thank you. See you.